Hello, welcome. My name is Jackie Alderete. I am so glad that you've made it here. If you are watching this video, I know that you are a person who has really heartfelt desires. You're trying to move forward in your life, and yet there's this pattern that keeps showing up. We call it self-sabotage. And if that's something that has really eluded you from moving forward and really accomplishing your goals, then you're in the right place. I have a really great tool and technique that you can implement at any time to help you to slow down the power of the self sabotage and to help you to move forward. So let's go ahead and get started with the tool. So I want you to first take inventory and be aware of whether or not the goal or the dream that you are pursuing, the desire that you have, you have to check in first on these levels. You have to do kind of a soul check-in first and recognize whether or not you really are aligned with it. If there's something that's out of alignment with it, you need to do that work first before we can move into self-sabotage work. But if you know that it's something that you really want, that you are aligned with it, you have a clear vision for it, and yet that's when the self sabotage is showing up. When you're like going for it and working towards it, it can be so frustrating. It's like trying to move forward when you're stuck in mud or quicksand. It is so exhausting because all of your energy is moving forward and trying to like gain an inch, and it's so much energy expended to move just a little bit, and there's so much like heaviness and like something that's just dragging you down. That's how self-sabotage feels to me. I don't know how it feels for you, but that's how it feels for me. But it's really frustrating when you know that your heart is like, this is what I'm wanting, I'm going for it, and then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, like gravity just like sucks you straight down and you can't do anything about it, or so it feels. We're going to change that today. I'm going to teach you something that you can do about it. So, um, really, what self sabotage is it means that there's something unconscious that's showing up within your energy field that is suggesting that there's something that you are unwilling to feel, or you're not quite ready to feel yet, or you're not comfortable feeling, or you don't simply know how to feel that thing. Um, and what do I mean by that is when we start moving forward towards something, our nervous system, which includes all of your sensory experiences, so sight, sound, touch, taste, feel, all of those sensory experiences that are rich, those are all your nervous system's way of receiving and inputting information from the environment into your energy field physically, as well as energetically and spiritually. And yet, when we start going towards a goal or a dream that we're aligned with, we have a clear vision for, and yet we still feel this pull back. Really, what's happening is our nervous system is not familiar with where we're heading. It recognizes that we're moving into unknown, possibly dangerous territory. And our body is built, especially our brain, is built to keep us alive. And so it's constantly searching for things that could potentially threaten your life and end up killing you. And so it will fight against anything that potentially looks like danger. And that's a really important thing to be aware of, because if your nervous system feels like your goal of making X amount of dollars in your business, or losing X amount of pounds of weight, or whatever your goal and your dream is, if your nervous system senses that that is going to potentially, even in the slightest way, cause you discomfort or potentially death, it will fight against it pretty hardcore. And that's really what we're up against. And that doesn't mean that it's not manageable. That just means that that's what's going on a body level and a spiritual level and a mind level, because it is our brain neurons that are at work as well. So really, one of the main things that we need to work on doing in order to kind of break this negative cycle, the minute that you feel this like self-sabotage kind of rise up and try to take you down, is we have to bring our awareness into a space of attuning into our bodies, filling that attunement and that awareness back in with compassion. And we really need to focus in on awareness around the body, because um, self sabotage does happen on a body level. And if we try to attack it just mentally, you're not going to get very far, because it's not just a mental thing. We need to attack it mentally, yes, but also with our heart and our emotions, as well as in the body. And so, really, when we when our sensory system is experiencing something that is new and unknown, or there's feelings that you're not willing to feel, or they're too scary, or you don't know how to feel them, that's when the sensory system is taking over, your nervous system is taking over. And this is where fear and anxiety, resistance, numbing, those things all happen on the body level. And so if we're staying in our heads, then we're going to completely miss a huge chunk of signals that will really help us to navigate the self sabotage. Um, and if we allow the subconscious impulses to be in charge, then we'll get pushed in a different direction, or many different directions that we really don't want to be driven into. So it's almost like, I speak in analogies, and so this is the analogy that's coming to me right now. So it's almost like if you are sailing on a boat and you're leaving one port and you know that you want to get to another port, a specific destination, like that's your end goal, that's your goal, that's your dream, that's your vision. So you have a destination, you have it mapped out. You're like, well, good, we're good. We have a path. And you get out on the open ocean and a huge storm arises, and these forces show up that really drive you off of your path. If you're not aware that you've been forced off of your path and course correct, then you're going to completely end up in a totally different destination than where you want to be. I mean, even just 1 degree early on in your journey could end up you being 300 miles away from your end destination by the end of your journey across the water. And that's a really important thing to be aware of. And so, again, back to our nervous system, like the storm on the ocean, it shows up because really our nervous system is seeking what is familiar to it, not necessarily what's good for it or what you think that you want. Um, it just knows what it knows, and it wants to stay familiar with those things. And so when you're starting to change and go in a different direction, it's like, no, 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 we're not comfortable with that. And so it tries to pull you back to the old pattern, to the familiar. Okay, so let's get into some actual tools that you can utilize. And this is kind of a 6-step process for you to walk through when self-sabotage shows up. So we're just going to keep this super simple. So what you're going to do is you're just going to stop. I mean, the first step is just stopping. Instead of allowing the self-sabotage to totally take over, just push pause on it. Slow down what you're doing, just like stop, right? Step number 2 is take a deep breath, or take a shallow breath. Just take a breath. It actually take like breathing allows you to dissipate the intense energy that's showing up. Um, because the self-sabotage wants you to go down a specific road, right? And by breathing, it allows you to just kind of decrease that urge to go down that old, familiar, well-worn path. And breathing helps you to be grounded into responding to the experience rather than reacting to the experience. And there's a difference between responding and reacting. Responding is kind of it's a conscious way of dealing with the situation. So you're intentionally dealing with whatever circumstances are showing up. Reactions are kind of a subconscious space where it's kind of the knee jerk reaction, right? It's like if you're at the doctor's office and they hit you on your knee with that rubber mallet, it's just a reflex, right? And you're just like, whoa. It's like you don't have much control over it. But a conscious awareness, a conscious reaction is something where you're intentionally responding. So that's the difference. So breathing helps you to come out of a space of like reflexes and be a lot more conscious in how you deal with it. So, third step is to actually just tell yourself that you're safe because the nervous system is freaking out because it doesn't feel safe. So, you have to tell yourself that you're safe. So, let's stop. Let's take a deep breath. Just tell yourself, I'm safe. I'm safe right now. I'm safe. Okay, so once you've done those three things, the fourth step is to start asking some questions. We're going to start getting curious. So, some potential questions that you could ask, that you can ask yourself to start finding answers to is what is it that's here? What is it that's here that's uncomfortable? Or what is it that I don't want to feel right now? Or what is it that feels unfamiliar or new? And I give you full permission to spend as much time answering those questions as you need, not to overthink them, but to allow your mind and your heart to respond in a soul centered kind of a way. But you may need to journal about those things. You may need to meditate on those things, pray about them, whatever works for you. But again, what is it that's here that's uncomfortable? And what is it that I don't want to feel right now? And what is it that feels unfamiliar or new? Those are really juicy questions that will open up some really good awarenesses for you. So, step five is a natural step. You're going to notice what is coming up, what answers are showing up. Be present and aware of whether or not what's showing up is one of two things. Is it an old fear or is it a present day fear? And what's the difference between those two things? An old fear is a fear that's been with you for a long time. It's something that has kind of been conditioned into you. It may have been from your childhood or from an earlier stage of your life, but because of something maybe traumatic that happened, there's this gripping fear that just shows up, right? Um, One thing that has impacted me in the past. One of my old fears was, oh my gosh, if I show up in this way, I'm not going to be loved or I'm not going to be accepted. Right. And I had to sit with that and be present with that because it was an old fear from when I was younger. Some things happened in my life that told my brain that by being a certain way, I would be rejected. And that was so painful to my nervous system that when I started moving forward in things like my business, it was really difficult for me to show up in my authentic way because my past traumatic experiences told me that my authenticity was the thing that caused me to be rejected by others. Therefore, I would feel pain, right? And the brain and the nervous system are like, no, no, no pain. We're not okay with that. And um, so that's just an example of an old fear. That was a condition-based fear that was not serving me today because I am safe. I can be authentic and I can find the people that choose to show up and love me, right? Um, and beyond that, like I can choose to love me and my authenticity first and foremost. And then by nature of that, those who want to be in my space will show up. That's actually the better way to say that. So, old fears are things that have happened in your past, things that have really held you bound for a long time, or even just a short time, but they're not like current present day active things. So, a present day fear is something it's real and it's alive and it's active today in this moment in time. So these are really sad examples, but maybe you've been in an abusive relationship or maybe you are in an abusive relationship, um, and or you have a relationship where there's toxicity that happens between you and another person, right? Like that could be an example of a present day real fear. Like there's real threats to the safety of this relationship. Or if you're in a physically abusive relationship, like there's present day fear that if you do something, you will get physically hurt. And if you are in that kind of situation, like please reach out for help. I'm here to help you. Please call the police. There's places to go. And I don't mean to laugh. That's not a laughing matter, but I just use that example as a to create some really distinct separation so that we can understand like what an old fear is versus a present day fear, so that we can be aware of those things. So as we ask the questions in step 4, step 5 is noticing what's coming up, like separating out, like, is this an old fear? Is this a new, I mean, is this a present day fear? If it is an old fear, ask yourself, can I choose to relax into it? Like, remind that voice of fear that it is okay and that you are safe right now, because that fear needs to know that you are safe. Fear shows up really most of the time out of protection for you. But ask yourself, is it okay to relax into you? And if you get a yes, then again, take another deep breath and just allow your physical body to relax into it. Feel your muscles just let loose just a little bit more. Allow your mind to just release those fear based thoughts a little bit more. Okay, take another deep breath. And breathing is so grounding for our system. It helps us to stay in a positive space. On a side note, breathing actually helps our vagus nerve, which is responsible for us being either in fight or flight or the rest and digest space. There's two sides of our nervous system. So the fear shows up when we're in the fight or flight. But when we're in rest and digest, like that's when we're relaxed and we can heal in that space. So what we're doing by breathing and asking these questions and relaxing into it is shifting our nervous system from the fight or flight into the rest and digest space so that you can find healing. So powerful. Okay. So, and again, so powerful to remind our nervous system and the fear and the old story that it's okay and that you're safe right now. Okay, step number 5. Step number 5 is we're going to ask some more questions. And the questions that we're going to ask ourselves are things like, what would my future best self do in this scenario? Another variation of that question is, what would my future or what would myself with more resources do in this scenario? Or what would my more evolved self do in this scenario? Another question to ask could be, how would my future self think about this or want to respond? And again, give you full permission to pause this, to take a few moments or a few minutes and journal about those things or to meditate and to really give that some space. Even 5 minutes is better than nothing. So set a timer, give yourself 5 minutes, journal, ponder, process, meditate, whatever you need to do. Find some clarity around those answers. Okay, so, and you can ask different variations of those same questions, right? Like you're wanting to get tapped into your higher self, your spiritual self, your self that's connected to all truth. What would she or he do in this scenario, right? Um, so get connected into that side of you and get those answers. And then the last thing is, as you're answering those questions, right? Like, what would my best self do, or what would my future self do in this scenario? Simply by asking the question, I want you to just be aware that there's a new sense of energy that's showing up inside of you. Before we started this whole thing, the self-sabotage is kind of a gripping, choking, dragging down into the darkness kind of an energy. It's kind of hopeless. It's like, oh, um, it's like I'm going under and I can't control it. And when we slow this stuff down, we stop, we breathe, we work with the nervous system, we work with the body, we do this work, we're doing the healing work, we're asking the questions, getting answers. There's something new that shows up. And before I label it for you, I want you to check in and sense what you're feeling. Like put some words to it to the best of your ability. And maybe emotional words. You may be feeling things like peace or hope or joy. You may be feeling a sense of confidence, but whatever the feeling tone is of what you're noticing, just simply notice that there's a massive, maybe not massive, but that there's a difference. I mean, I'm hoping that there's a massive difference by doing this work, but sometimes it's the little tweaks that matter. So notice from before you started this exercise to now that there's a difference. But really, what you should be noticing is some sort of an empowerment energy as a result of doing this work and asking the questions that I led you to ask. And with this new sense of empowerment energy that's circulating through you now, notice what natural action steps you want to take. It may be a tiny action step, maybe a big giant action step, but either way, notice that action steps flow out of a space of feeling empowered. And notice that an action step was not on your mind at all when you were getting taken down with the self-sabotage, right? Self-sabotage causes you to go into panic mode, or at least it does for me. But when we can slow all this down and do this work and get ourselves back into an empowered state, we naturally become more aligned with our heart and our soul. And then by nature, we're like, oh, you know what? I want to do this. Like it's maybe reaching out to a friend, or I want to go write down my thoughts, or I want to set this new goal, or whatever. But just notice that the empowerment energy leads to taking action. And um, now your homework is to go take that action step that just flowed out of you. So that is my 6-step process for overcoming self-sabotage. It's a powerful thing to do. It may take you a few rounds of going through that for it to become more natural for you the next time that self-sabotage shows up. Um, Maybe write these things down or keep this video close by so that you can come back and watch it at the next appropriate time for you. But I'm wishing you the absolute best in your journey towards alignment, self-fulfillment, spiritual fulfillment, listening to your heart, honoring your heart, and learning how to get your heart and your mind and your soul all aligned in the same path so that you can feel like you're making progress towards your goals. Because the thing that I know about you is the thing that I know about me. And the thing that I know about me and all other humans on this planet is that we have divine, great potential. God wants us to be happy, but there's work that is required in order to create that level of happiness that we are desiring. And it's possible. It is so possible for you. If you are needing help with any of these things that we've talked about today, if you're needing extra support, reach out. I'd be happy to help and support you. I'd be happy to schedule a free call so that we can get into some nitty-gritty details and figure out what is stopping you the most and help you create a plan so that you can feel empowered and more confident in your journey towards your goal and your dreams and your desires. I'm wishing you a fantastic, successful kind of a day. Thank you for joining me.